Wednesday. My name is Jordana Thompson, and I'm the Senior Program Coordinator for JA of New Mexico. Thank you so much for attending this month's Virtual Career Speaker Series event. This program is open to JA students across the state of New Mexico and highlights business professionals, entrepreneurs, and innovative thinkers from a variety of industries. Each featured speaker will share details about their education, job, and career journey. During our speaker's presentation, if you've got any question, go ahead and write those down or throw them into the chat box, and we will address those during the Q&A portion of our event. Today, we are very excited to welcome Jess DuVerneay, a user interface consultant with her own business, and she's going to tell you all about what that means. But thank you so much, Jess, for being here today. I will go ahead and mute myself, and the floor is all yours.
Thanks so much, Jordana. I'm really happy to be here, everyone. I know it's like, oh man, we have to listen to another adult talk, but I just want to reassure you all before I jump in. I used to be a middle school and high school teacher, so I totally get it. I'll try to make this as entertaining and relevant to hopefully you guys as possible. So again, my name is Jess DuVerneay. I am a strategy and product design consultant, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that means. First, I just wanted to get to know you guys a little bit better. Obviously, I'm not going to get to know you, but you can know who's talking to you right now. I'm 43 years old. I don't have kids. My favorite thing is that I have 2 pet chinchillas, and this is my chinchilla Zobi with a party hat on, which I spent a lot of time with him, so that's pretty exciting. I was born in Michigan, and there's a bunch of other stats here on me that you can read. I've had 20 jobs at least in the period of my life, and I'm excited to share kind of the highlights and the things that I've learned from all of those different jobs with you guys today. So this is a visualization of all of the jobs I've done, like the bigger picture jobs that I'm mostly going to talk about. My first job was really when I was 12 years old. And you'll see I've kind of changed roles every 2 or 3 years, except for when I found a job that I really, really like, and I've sat there for a while. And so the other thing that you'll see is that I did take a year off from working, and I recently quit my biggest job that I've had, my favorite job I've ever had. And so I've kind of been a confused person, and I'll tell you guys a little bit more about the pros and cons of taking some breaks from your job. So just to tell you a little bit more about my early years and where I started, these are some pictures of me when I was 12, about the time I got my first job. 17 is probably about the time I got my second job, and that's a picture of me at prom with my current husband. And then this is me when I graduated college, went to Michigan State, and I got my degree in art and art education. So like I said, I was a teacher. I used to be an art teacher, and this was me half of my life ago. When I was a high school and college student, that's kind of, I would consider my main jobs at that time in my life. What I did was I was a pretty good student. I wouldn't say I was the best student, but I paid attention in classes, at least the ones I liked. I was in orchestra, National Honor Society. I was actually involved in junior achievement for a while when I was in middle school. I actually really liked that. It was super fun. My jobs were babysitter and nanny. I had a paper route. I worked at a library putting books back on the shelves. And then when I was in college, I managed a photography lab. And one of my favorite jobs in college was I actually unloaded trucks at UPS, getting the big trucks devoid of packages and getting them onto where they were. So, that's kind of skipping over a lot of jobs, and I could talk about all of those and the pros and cons. But really, the things that I learned the most in high school and college was that I really hate being told what to do. And part of that was really, people would say, well, you need to do this, and this is what's best for you. And I realized, like, as soon as somebody would say that to me, it kind of gave me this sense of like, no, I don't even want to do that now that you told me, even if it's a good idea. And so I'm guessing a lot of you are probably having some of those same thoughts. And I just want to let you know that, like, I think it's actually important that you decide if you are kind of person who goes with the flow of what other people tell you, or if you're really kind of self-directed and you say, I know myself and I know what I want to do. My parents told me to do a lot of things, and I realized I actually moved out of my parents' house when I was a senior in high school because I decided that I wanted to listen to my own plan. And so it was dramatic for sure. But I think those were some hard lessons I learned in high school and college that ended up actually serving me really well. I also learned I like having my own money. I like solving hard problems. I love books and learning, and I love art, and that art actually can be a career path. All through high school, people were like, "Oh, art can't be a career path." And then, as you'll see, as I talk through some of these slides, I became an art teacher and a painter, and that kind of foundational skill set around art has led me to where I am today, and we'll get to that. So, my first job out of college was to be a teacher. These are the kids, some of my favorite kids from when I taught at James Monroe Middle School here in Albuquerque, up in the northwest side of town. So I don't know if anyone from James Monroe is listening, but hello, I used to teach there. And as a teacher, I taught art, language arts, and study hall. I wrote lesson plans. I showed people how to do things. I gave a lot of presentations. Obviously, as a teacher, you're kind of presenting every single day, all day. I helped people, I graded homework, and I spent a lot of time communicating with parents. And so what I learned from being a teacher was that I'm really good at planning and organizing and presenting. Helping people to learn how to do stuff is really fun, and it made me feel really good about myself. And I also learned that teachers work really hard and aren't paid enough, and that's kind of why I decided, like, hey, I like teaching, but what else is out there for me? So after, I think I was a teacher for about 2 or 3 years. Then I decided, okay, hey, I'm 26. So from 26 to 28, I decided it was time for me to go back and get my master's degree. And I thought, hey, I could get my master's degree in teaching or in art, or I could kind of pivot. And I looked around at the teachers and I thought the person who was having the most fun were the librarians and the people who were working in libraries. And since I worked in libraries as a kid, I was like, I'm just going to go get my master's degree in library science. And so these are pictures of me being a goofball in my master's program. This is actually the Library of Congress, and that's me running through the Library of Congress, acting goofy and having a good time. And this is me on the day that I decided I no longer wanted to be a librarian. So I got really lucky and I went to a party of one of my professors, and they were kind of telling me, like, I'm not really sure why you're in libraries. You should probably be working more around computers and technology. And so when I was in grad school, I started as a library science major, thought I was going to be a librarian. I was actually running the fine arts library at the University of Michigan. And so you'll see I was an artist and then an art teacher and then an art librarian. So I was doing like all of the art things. I took a lot of classes, and I was also kind of involved in being a president of a student group, the Special Libraries Association. And so while I was getting my master's degree, I think, everyone thought I was nuts when I left teaching to go to library school, because people were like, you have a good job. Like, why would you leave a good job and go like get into debt? And I was like, it was really important for me to invest in myself, invest in my happiness, and kind of like decide who I wanted to be, maybe a little bit more independent of the things that people had told me when I was younger. It was 100% worth it for me to quit teaching and to go get my master's degree. I also learned in grad school that leading people and teams is really something that comes naturally to me, and that at the end of the day, it's actually okay to switch plans in the middle. Just because you pick a career when you're in middle school or high school, or as you can see for me, college, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the career that you have. I had a different career when I ended grad school than I thought I was going to have going into it. I thought I was going to be a librarian, but I ended up coming out being a UX, user experience researcher, designer, and strategist. And so that's a lot, right? So I'll tell you, some of you maybe have heard about UX design or information architecture. A lot of you maybe have not. And so from the age of 28 to 33, so this is probably the biggest part of my career, like 5-6 years. I actually spent time working for a bunch of different companies and helping them make sure that their websites made sense for the people who were going to use them, were organized correctly, and got the results that the organizations needed them to get. So you'll see I worked for the NFL.com. That was my first job right out of grad school, and that was wild, and that's a whole other presentation I won't get into. It was really great for me to start my career with a big name brand, but I'll tell you, of all of my jobs, that was my least favorite. It was very boring, and I didn't particularly like the people I was working with. The other jobs you see here, the Understanding Group and One North, you probably have never heard of those groups, but those were the most fun jobs for me, because at those jobs, people cared about me, and I was doing work that I thought was interesting. So what does a UX designer and an information architect do? at the core, we get in and understand, what is the business need for this website or for this online system or tool? What would the end users, the people who are actually using it, want to be able to do? How are we going to organize all of the information so the website gets the business what they need and the users like to use it? We decide what words and information to use on the website. Then I would work with actual visual designers or actual artists, like digital artists, to pick the colors and fonts and things like that. But I didn't actually pick the colors and fonts. But having had such a big background in art, I could talk with the designers and say, oh, I don't like that color. Or I think this line is a little weird. Or we can use implied lines here instead of a dotted line. All of the kinds of languages I learned as an art librarian, as an art teacher, as an artist, as an art student, it made me a better partner with the designers who were actually working on designing the websites. Then I would make sure that I could test the websites with the people who would be using it and make sure that it actually works. And I also, as I kind of grew in my career, people were like, oh, I like what you're saying. Can you teach me about that? Or I like what you're saying. Can you write an article about that? And so I would host workshops and webinars and things like that. And so while I was doing all of this work, working in the web space around UX design, user experience design, and information architecture, I again realized I like working on and organizing not just information, but complicated websites for experts. I like to understand processes, what steps people take to do something and what order they're going to do those steps in. For me, I also realized that while I, had a lot of training and background in art, I didn't really care what a website looked like. I cared about that it worked well and that it made sense. And so I really realized that maybe I wasn't an artist and I was more of an organizer or an architect. And working in technology can make a lot of money, which I was a big fan of. Going from, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I didn't make a ton of money as a teacher. And I was like, oh, I like money and this job will give me a lot of money. I also realized that I don't like selling things. And so anytime I had to work on a website where my job was to sell more widgets or sell a cool pair of shoes to someone, I was like, I don't care about this at all. If you were asking me to work on a website that was like, how can we tackle climate change, or how can we get more information to underserved communities, or how can we make a website to help people find really detailed information that's going to be hard for them to find in books, I was all about it. But I just really didn't like selling things, and that was a good thing for me to learn about myself. I did want to talk a little bit more about UX and IA as information architecture as a job path, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't really understand. Because you guys have probably all heard of, oh, I do web design, or I write computer code, I'm a developer, or I'm a computer engineer. And so when I say I work in websites, people automatically assume, oh, you're designing the website, making it look pretty, or you're coding the website, you're making the website exist. And I'm like, no, I don't do any of those things. I do the part in the middle where we decide, like, what is the website that we're making? Why are we making it? And who are we making it for? And that's not a really glamorous or exciting part of the website design for people. But for me, it's like, it's the core. If it doesn't make sense, it's like, think about this. If your body didn't have a skeleton, like, how useful would your body be? It'd be pretty weird without a skeleton, because it'd be gelatinous and maybe it wouldn't work and it wouldn't move the way it was supposed to. I kind of think of myself as a person who makes the skeleton or the blueprints for the website, and I make sure that those structures make sense. This is a cute diagram that I think explains the difference between designers and like a UX designer or a user researcher. So it was more analytical, more scientific, more critical thinking, and less creativity, which is weird because people assume, given my background in art, I would have been more around the creative part. But again, as I'm going through my career journey, I'm stopping and I'm thinking, is this what I really like? Is this what I'm really good at? Is this what's really important to me as a person? Do I feel like what I'm doing is the best use of my time? This is the first website I ever helped structure. It was the Detroit Lions. And you can laugh at this because this was from 2008. So it's like from the Wayback Machine. But I was very excited because, again, I was from Michigan. I love the Detroit Lions, which I know is, not the team this year, obviously. But I liked being able to go in and decide how everything was organized and how the navigation worked and what kind of content was going to go in places. The other thing I think that's really cool about UX research is that it requires you to really understand people. This is an example of a persona. A persona is a made up individual that you keep in mind as you design a website for them. So I have a really good time understanding people and almost doing the creative writing around what would this person need? What would this person want? And then building the website to that person, not to my preferences or not to the preferences of someone else on my team who's not actually going to be using the website. These are the blueprints that I was talking about when I said I work on blueprints for websites. So you'll see it's just black and white, boxes and arrows. Some content's going to go here, a picture is going to go here, but I'm not going to tell you what font to use, what exact image should go there. I'll just tell you how these particular little elements on the website are supposed to work. The other thing I spent a lot of time doing is understanding workflows. And so this is just a workflow map. This is me going in and saying, this person needs to do this thing and move this object from this place to this other thing. And so again, it's more strategic and organizational than actually doing design. So I'm about to throw a curveball at you. So I love this job. This job is great. And I liked making money at it. But at some point in my early 30s, I was like, no, you know what? I don't want to do this computer stuff anymore. I want to own a gallery. So I moved back to Albuquerque and I opened a gallery that focused on selling creepy handmade local things. It was down in the university area on Harvard. So if any of you are familiar with the university area in Albuquerque, this was there in one of those little casitas. And so this was just some wild thing that I wanted to do that I felt was important to me. I wanted to be a gallery owner. I wanted to get back into talking with artists. And so I came up with the idea for the store. I started and ran the store. I bought a lot of inventory to sell in the store. I found artists to show, made a website, managed my social media and my marketing. I handled all of my finances. And at the same time, while I was running this gallery, I was sitting there and I was working on wireframes and personas and user interviews. So I was kind of doing two jobs at once. And this was my first time kind of acting more as a consultant, just doing the thing I was really good at, UX research and design, part-time, while kind of pursuing a passion project, this gallery. So what I learned from having this gallery in my early 30s was it's okay to have two jobs at once. I love coming up with big ideas and having something a little crazy to work on while I have my normal, big girl job. I like doing things that other people don't think I can pull off, that, people would say, well, I could never open a gallery or I could never work two jobs at once. Well, I can. So I'm going to, and I'm going to give myself that experience and believe in myself enough to do it. Even if everyone, my parents, my friends might think I'm crazy, I'm still going to try, because how will I know if I can do it or not unless I try? I really love hosting events. And I'll just be honest, by the time I got done owning this gallery, I was tired of art. I didn't want to go to a museum. I didn't want to make art. I didn't want to talk to artists. I was just over it. I had done every single job I could possibly do in art. And I felt like, okay, if I have not proven that I can have a career in art by doing literally all of these things, I don't, yeah, I proved it. I can have a career in art. But guess what? I don't want a career in art anymore, because at the end of the day, I don't like selling things. And a lot of having an art career at a certain point is, can you sell your art? Can you sell the art of other people? And because I don't like selling things, this just, it wasn't for me. So the other thing I did that I think is a little weird, and this kind of happened while I was working in UX, is I just decided, hey man, I've been working since I was 12. I'm tired. I need to stop working and take a break. And that's another thing that I think people would say, like, oh man, like, you get a career, you stay in that career, you don't work two jobs at once, you don't quit a good job and go to school to do something else, and you certainly don't quit working for 6 months and take a break. But guess what? I did. And this is a list of all of the places that I went to. I spent a lot of time in Europe. I spent a lot of time in Canada. I spent a lot of time in the Western United States at national parks. And I spent some time down in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, having some great experiences and learning a lot about myself. And so I took 6 months off. I spent 2 months here, 2 months here, 2 months here. I kind of relaxed. I visited national parks. I learned a lot of new things. And while I was doing this, I organized a big conference, which is silly because I was supposed to be taking time off, but I was organizing again. I realized I like organizing events. So I was like, well, on my time off, I'll organize another big event. And so what I learned, and this was kind of like a wake-up call, is like, I'm not really good at relaxing. I'm not good at chilling out. And I really need to get better at that, because I don't always need to be doing something all the time. In the free time I did take when I took that time off, I loved having time to think. I really realized that working is really good, but that's not all of who I am. I realized that in the past, like 10 years of my life, I hadn't been spending any time in nature, and that's something I need a lot of. I realized that it is okay to not know what comes next, because if you just quit your job and travel, it's like, well, what's happening next? It's okay to not know, because if you believe in yourself and you follow your intuition, that thing will probably come to you if you're working hard and you're really listening to who you are. So, and I will say, it's okay if you need to take a break. It's not going to kill your career. My career actually got better after I went and did some traveling. These are just a couple of pictures that I took of the amazing places I went to. The one on the left is Switzerland. The one in the center is Sagrada Familia, a big cathedral in Spain. And the one on the right is Northern Ireland with my niece. I took some time and I took my niece traveling because I wanted her to realize that the world was a lot bigger than the experiences that she had. And I had the resources to do it. And so we had a great time. And that's us hanging out at Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. So when I stopped and I took some time off, I realized, like, yes, I'm really good at user experience research and design. I'm really good at structuring websites. I'm really good at organizing events. But what I realized is I wanted to take that ability to lead people and lead teams and apply it to my career. So the next phase of my career was really like from 34 to 42, I was a design leader, meaning I did less of the actual work and I more helped other UX designers do the work and get better at their craft. So I was interviewing and hiring designers, mentoring and coaching designers, working on improving processes for how are the designers working with the developers and the clients. I make sure the work quality was good. I would have to go and sell work, give presentations, estimate how long work would take for teams, and think about, like, what else are we going to offer to our clients to make sure they're getting their needs met. So I learned if you're a manager, your job is really to make your employees' life easier. It's not that your employees like report to you and do what you say and you're the boss. Your job is really to like serve the other people. I also learned it's really important to take blame. So like if you're a leader and something goes wrong, sorry, it's not your team's fault. It's your fault because you weren't being a very good leader and you weren't making sure that your employees were set up for success. The flip side of that is that if something goes well, you're not like, oh, I did a great job, I'm the boss. You give the credit, you share the credit with your team. And that's actually what makes you a good leader, in my opinion. Each person you manage needs very different things. There's no one size fits all. You have to address each individual as a unique person. And that can take a lot of emotional effort on your part if you're doing that. Things always take longer than you think they will. Leading people and doing the work are very different things. And I learned that it's not that I don't like selling things. I don't like selling things that I'm not excited about, because I actually did end up really liking selling work that I thought was going to be valuable and selling the talents and the amazing things that my team of designers could do. That was enjoyable for me. This is just some examples of the kind of work you do as a manager. You make agreements with your team and you say, this is how I'm going to support you. This is what I'm going to do to protect you. This is how I'm going to elevate and advance you. So these are just some of the things that I said I would do. This is a picture of a team that I worked with. I'm right here and a bunch of people on my team are here. So it was really fun to be just a person who was making sure that the team was happy and healthy. This is a demo reel. Maybe it would make more sense, Jordana, for us to link to this instead of playing it. What do you think? Yeah. So just so you guys know, I did a lot of really great work as a design leader. And so this is a link that Jordana will share with you if you guys are interested, just showing some of the kind of like amazing, beautiful things that, again, I didn't design these, my team designed these. And I was just really happy to be able to lead a team of people who were so creative and so talented. So if you've got time, definitely check this video out. Let's see here. And then let's see here, go here, go to the next slide. And you know, this is another thing. I liked working with a bunch of different diverse types of people. I liked being a woman who worked in technology. I felt really supported by my community and really enjoyed the opportunity to raise up other people who maybe didn't feel safe or supported or included in technology. So the reason I'm saying that is, like, if you're a person and you feel like, oh, people like me don't work in technology, people and me don't work as designers. Yeah, they do. And once you get into those spaces, you can make those spaces more comfortable and more inclusive for people who are like yourself. So don't think that just because you don't see yourself represented in a particular job or career or field, that you can't be one of the people that gets in there and makes it better for everyone else. So today, I told you guys recently, I quit my job last year, and it was my favorite job I've ever had. And I'd been there for 5 years, and I was just like, you know what? Nah, I'm done. And so I took some time off, and I think I was kind of a little confused as to what to do. And I'll just be honest with you guys. I don't know what my next full-time job is going to be. Right now, I'm really lucky having had a pretty successful career where I've met a lot of people who have enjoyed working with me. And so right now I'm just getting requests to come work on project at a time. And some of the things I'm doing are just getting in, and any random problem an organization has, I help them solve that problem. I'm helping them figure out how to have user experience and product strategy teams, or do user research more meaningfully, or improve their processes. Excuse me, I've been doing some coaching, meaning like other people who are designers or leaders or starting startups. I'll coach them and say like, hey, well, you might want to consider this, or you might want to dig into this area. The other thing I really like about being a consultant is I have a lot more free time. I maybe work like 20 hours a week, and I can help out with things that I didn't have time for in my life before. And so what I'm learning from being a consultant is that I love having a non-traditional part-time schedule. I'm very lucky to have had all my experiences in the past to pull from as a consultant. And I think I want to go back to working with a team, because it's kind of lonely being a consultant. And I'll go in, I'll work on a project. I won't really connect with people in the way that I did when I was a designer or when I was a leader in a team. And so I think that's what I want to do next, but I don't really know. And I'm going to take this time to really think through, what are these things that I've learned about myself? Who am I? And actually, what's going to be best for me next in my life? So that is all I have about my career. I just wanted to close on a couple of pieces of advice that I think hopefully would apply to everyone. There's no normal. There's no one right way to do things. I can't emphasize this enough, but you need to do what is right for you. Not what your mom and dad tell you, not what your teacher tells you, not what your best friend tells you, not what you saw on TikTok. You have to do what is right for you. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you enjoy it. I've been good at a lot of things in my career that I don't like to do. And I try to not do those things anymore. If I don't enjoy something, I don't do it if I can avoid it. Now, like, there's some things that you just can't avoid, right? Like, I don't like filling out my timesheet to get paid. But guess what? If I don't fill out my timesheet, I don't get paid. So I have to fill out my timesheet, right? Like, I'm not saying a blanket, if you don't like something, don't do it. I'm just saying, if you realize that you don't like something, maybe don't pursue that as a path for yourself, even if you're good at it. Things are going to take way longer than you think. I really like this quote: planning is indispensable, but plans are useless. And what that means is, it's good to think ahead. It's good to say, I might want to do this in 2 or 3 years, but I'll guarantee you, whatever you think you're going to be doing in 2 or 3 years is not what you planned on doing. And that's okay. I think it's really important to ask for help, and it's important to give help to those who take the time to ask you for help. Again, taking blame and sharing credit. And work is important, but that's not all of who you are. So I know this is a career series, but you're a whole person, and your career should fit into who you are as a person. You shouldn't have to fit yourself into your career. So again, this is just kind of like a wrap up of where I was, how I've changed, the different places I've been throughout, the past 30 years of my life, because that's how long I've been working. And I just want to thank you guys all for your time today, and say I appreciate y'all paying attention, and hopefully there was one good thing in here for you. And if everything I said was not useful to you, then ignore it, right? It's just one person's perspectives. And again, your perspective is the most important one for your success. So that's it. Any questions from the group or Jordana?
Thank you so much, Jess, for sharing your story. It was fantastic and full of so much information and
Yes.
juicy bits of advice. I've got 2 whole sticky notes here written down of just the fantastic advice you were throwing in, and questions that I would love to ask you as well. Students and community members on the call, we will now move into our Q&A portion of the event. So if you've got any questions for Miss Jess, go ahead and throw those into the chat box now, or in a few moments, I will allow you to unmute and ask your question yourself if you would like. But while you think about those questions, I'll start us off. Miss Jess, can you tell us about a time that you failed at work and how you handled it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as a designer, the reality is you're going to fail a lot if you're working with clients because the client's going to come to you and say, I want a sandwich. And you're going to design the best sandwich that you could design. And it's got bread and it's got peanut butter and it's got jelly. And at the end of the day, you give your client this beautiful peanut butter and jelly sandwich that you've designed. And the client looks at you and is like, I am allergic to peanuts and I wanted a roast beef sandwich. And so at a certain point, you just learn to ask more questions up front. And you also learn that like when you fail at something, it's not you are bad or you're a dumb person or you didn't do a good job. It's that you are given some more information so you can learn. And so really what I learned was any failure is just an opportunity to get more information and do the job differently. So, I mean, that's a pretty a good example, I think, of a time that I failed like daily as a designer. So I don't know. I it doesn't bum me out anymore.
That's awesome. I love that example that you made of the sandwich. That makes perfect sense. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Another question for me, and then we'll head to the chat. Growing up, who was your biggest influence?
Oh man, who was my biggest influence growing up as a kid? Um, I think honestly, it wasn't a person necessarily. It was all the books I read. I spent a lot of time at the library, spent a lot of time reading books. And I think reading books from different cultures, different people, different eras, I think it really kind of opened up my mind in a way that I wouldn't have had opportunity to. If I had to have a person who influenced me, it was probably several of my teachers, to be honest. I had teachers who really took an interest in me, and sometimes they would tell me things I didn't like, and they would give me criticism that I thought was not helpful. But I realized that they were giving me that criticism because they actually thought I could do better and wanted more for me. And so, in retrospect, like maybe I thought they were jerks at the time, but if they were taking the time to give me that feedback, they probably influenced me the most because I was actually able to reflect on that.
I love that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Next question. You talked a lot about doing what's best for you and not necessarily doing what your parents tell you to do or what educators or other adults in your life may tell you what to do.
Mhm.
And for our young people out there, how do you combat that? How do you combat being told what to do in a respectful manner, of
Yeah,
course?
for sure. I mean, I think for me, it's two things. It's making sure that, and I'm still learning this, I'll just be honest. I'm 43 and practicing the pause, right? Like taking a minute to say, I'm receiving information. I don't need to react to this information right now. If my mom tells me to do something and I don't agree with it, I don't need to just go at my mom. If my boss comes to me and says, like, I think we need to change this, I don't need to immediately say, well, I disagree and here's why. I can practice the pause, I can receive the information and I can process that information and then decide if it is really, am I just reacting to it because like I'm being, oppositional defiant disorder self today, where if you tell me to do something, I'm gonna tell you no. Or is that person really like missing something that then I can explain to them? So that brings me to the second part of how I would typically combat this is I spend time a lot by myself thinking and reflecting. And everybody thinks and reflects differently. Some people do it through writing. Some people do it through listening to me. I listen to a lot of music. Some people do it through exercising or journaling or talking with their friends. But I think whatever way that you reflect, practice that pause when you get in new information before you respond to it, and then take time to sit and think with that information. Those are the two best things I would recommend for everyone.
I love that. Practice the pause. That's
Mhm.
a perfect way to sum that up. Thank you.
Mhm.
Another question. You had mentioned that you were learning to relax. You're not great at relaxing. What are some tips and tricks that you kind of learned to help you relax, to kind of set work aside and take care of yourself?
That's a great question, and I am open to feedback and comments from the audience because I think a lot of people are better at that than I am. But I will say that exercising has really helped me a lot, which I hated exercise when I was a kid. I hated exercise in my 20s and 30s, and now in my 40s, I'm like, oh, when I go for a long walk or I do yoga or something, I can get my mind into a spot where I'm not thinking about the checklist. I got to do this thing. There's this piece of feedback from this person. Here's this other thing I need to do. I can really be present and embodied in my body. So exercise has been really good for me. And I would also say my pet chinchillas have been really good for me. I was not really a pet person, but now I spend like an hour or two every night just hanging out with them. And I think that's kind of encouraged me to slow down a little bit and stop overscheduling myself, because I'm responsible for my animals. So if you volunteer, or if you have other people or animals that you need to take care of, that can be a good way to help you kind of like slow down, and then in those moments appreciate and relax a little bit more. At least for me, that's what's worked.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Those are some solid tips there. I think that's some good advice to follow. A good start for relaxation.
Thank you. And again, open to feedback. And if you've got tips, I'd like to hear them too.
Wonderful. Alrighty, and then one more question here from our chat is, if you could go back in time to your middle school self when you started working, what would you tell yourself? Would you give yourself any advice?
My middle school self, and give myself advice. I mean, I think I would honestly probably just go back and pat myself on the back and say, like, you're doing a lot better than you think you are. And all of the like drama and problems you're going through right now are going to give you a lot of skills to be a successful adult. And being an adult is a lot of fun. So like, don't get too down, because being a kid kind of sucks sometimes. And it's really worth it to push through and get to the point where you have that autonomy and independence as an adult. So, I mean, maybe I would say to myself, like, it gets better. And life can be a lot of fun once you're in charge of your own life.
I love that. Giving yourself a pat on the back. Give your middle school
Yeah.
self some love.
Yeah.
Love that. Well, thank you so much, Jess, for sharing your story and for answering those questions. Students and community members, we hope you enjoyed today's program. But before we log off, just a couple of announcements. Following this presentation, you will be asked to complete a post-program mindset survey, and we would really appreciate your participation in evaluating our programs. Educators, please make sure you share this link to the survey with your students so they can participate. Lastly, please make a note that these events do happen monthly, and we are hosting them on the second Wednesday of every month. Next month, on March 13th, we will welcome Gene Grant, who used to be the host of New Mexico in Focus on PBS for almost 20 years. He's very excited to join us and share his career journey. So keep an eye on your emails for those registration links. But thank you so very much, Jess, for joining us today. And to all of our students and community members on the call, I hope you have a wonderful day and happy Valentine's Day.